Tonight, you are not going to hear empty advice about thinking positively or simplistic solutions telling you to just relax. What you are about to hear goes much deeper than that. In this video, you will understand why your mind never seems to stop racing, even when your body is exhausted. You will discover why so many people spend more time trapped inside their thoughts than actually living their lives. You will see how small thoughts slowly become mental storms that drain your energy in silence. And most importantly, you will begin to understand what happens when the mind finally becomes quiet, when the noise fades, and clarity returns. Throughout this audiobook, you will slowly uncover the hidden mechanisms behind mental chaos, overthinking, emotional exhaustion, and the constant pressure of modern life. If you enjoy deep psychological content, self-development, and powerful insights about the human mind, subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with someone whose mind never rests, and write in the comments. When was the last time you experienced true silence inside your mind? There are people who believe the most dangerous kind of chaos exists outside of us. Wars, conflicts, noise, stress, financial pressure, social problems. But the truth most people realize too late is that the worst chaos is often invisible. It exists inside the human mind. It is the chaos that follows you into your room at night, the chaos that waits for silence before it speaks louder than anything else. The moment your surroundings become quiet, your mind suddenly begins replaying conversations, mistakes, fears, unfinished scenarios, imaginary arguments, future disasters, regrets from years ago, and questions with no answers. It feels as if the brain refuses to let you rest. The terrifying part is that the mind eventually becomes addicted to noise. After enough stress and overstimulation, silence starts to feel uncomfortable. Many people cannot sit alone without checking their phones every few minutes. They cannot walk without music. They cannot eat without videos playing in the background. They cannot even fall asleep without distraction. Because the moment external noise disappears, internal noise begins to rise, and for some people, that internal noise is unbearable. The modern world constantly overloads the human brain. Every day, your mind absorbs endless information, comparisons, expectations, opinions, fears, headlines, notifications, and pressures. Social media quietly trains people to feel behind in life. You see someone becoming successful, someone getting rich, someone traveling, someone finding love, someone appearing happier than you. And without realizing it, the brain starts creating silent anxiety, a feeling that you are late, that you are not enough, that everyone else is moving forward while you remain stuck. Over time, the mind becomes crowded. Too many voices fighting for attention at the same time. The voice of fear, the voice of self-doubt, the voice of comparison, the voice of regret, the voice of the future. Eventually, your real voice becomes impossible to hear underneath all the noise. That is why true mental silence feels almost magical when it finally appears. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because your perception changes. A chaotic mind does not see reality clearly. It sees distorted versions of reality shaped by fear, insecurity, and exhaustion. A restless mind turns small problems into disasters. It interprets silence as rejection, delays as failure, criticism as proof of worthlessness. Even harmless situations become emotionally heavy because the mind never stops searching for danger. Some people spend years fighting invisible battles inside their heads while appearing completely normal on the outside. They smile, they work, they socialize, they continue functioning, but internally, They are mentally exhausted every single day. This kind of exhaustion is dangerous because nobody sees it. There are no physical wounds, no visible scars. Yet the person feels tired all the time, not physically, but psychologically. The human brain was designed to protect you from danger, but sometimes it becomes overprotective. It starts treating every uncertainty like a threat, every risk like a catastrophe, every mistake like the end of the world. This is how overthinking slowly becomes a prison. The mind believes that if it keeps analyzing everything, it will eventually find safety. But instead, it creates endless mental loops, endless rehearsals of conversations that may never happen, endless imaginary scenarios, endless emotional stress over things that do not even exist yet. And this is where many people lose themselves. They confuse thinking with solving. But not all thinking is useful. Some thinking is simply emotional self-destruction repeated over and over again. The mind keeps replaying pain because it believes repetition creates control. Yet the more you obsess over something, the more power you give it. There is another uncomfortable truth most people avoid. Sometimes the noise in your mind is not caused by life itself. Sometimes it is caused by avoidance. People stay mentally busy because silence forces them to face uncomfortable emotions: loneliness, fear, emptiness, disappointment, uncertainty. So the brain creates constant distraction to protect itself from deeper emotional pain. This is why many people become uncomfortable when life slows down. If there are no problems, the mind searches for one. If there is peace, the brain creates tension. Because chaos has become familiar, stress has become normal, and calmness feels strange. But eventually, some people reach a breaking point, a moment where they realize overthinking has never truly protected them. Most of the disasters they feared never happened. Most of the stress changed nothing. Most of the mental suffering was created internally. And suddenly, something shifts. They begin letting go of the need to control everything, the need to predict every outcome, the need to understand every person, the need to win every argument inside their head. They slowly realize that peace does not come from controlling life. Peace comes from no longer allowing every thought to control you. A silent mind is not an empty mind. It is a disciplined mind. A mind that knows which thoughts deserve attention and which thoughts should simply pass by like clouds in the sky. A calm mind understands that not every fear is a prophecy. Not every emotion is truth. Not every thought deserves belief. When you begin observing your thoughts instead of immediately reacting to them, something powerful happens. You create distance between yourself and the chaos. You stop identifying with every negative emotion. You stop becoming every fearful thought. And slowly, your mind loses its grip over you. The strange thing about mental peace is that it often arrives quietly, not through dramatic moments, not through external success, not through money, status, or validation. It arrives when the mind becomes tired of fighting itself. It arrives when you finally accept uncertainty, when you stop trying to mentally solve every possible future, when you stop replaying the past like a punishment. And maybe that is the greatest freedom a human being can experience. Not controlling the world, but finally no longer being controlled by the endless noise inside their own mind. The mind is incredibly persuasive when it is afraid. It can make imagined problems feel more real than reality itself. A single negative thought can grow into an entire emotional storm within minutes. And the more emotionally exhausted you become, the harder it is to separate truth from fear. That is why mentally overwhelmed people often feel trapped even when there is no physical prison around them. Their prison exists internally, built from constant anticipation, pressure, self criticism, and emotional overload. One of the strangest things about mental chaos is that it often disguises itself as productivity. Some people believe they are being responsible because they think about everything all the time. They analyze every possibility, every future outcome, every conversation, every risks, but eventually they realize they are not preparing for life anymore. They are hiding from it because endless thinking creates the illusion of control while quietly stealing action, confidence, and peace. There comes a point where the mind no longer thinks to solve problems. It thinks because it has forgotten how to stop. The brain becomes like an engine left running all night, overheating in silence. Even during moments that should feel peaceful, the internal tension remains. A vacation becomes overthinking. A conversation becomes analysis. A small mistake becomes emotional, punishment lasting for days. The body may sit still, but the mind continues running without rest. And slowly, people lose their connection to the present moment. They stop experiencing life directly. Instead, they experience their interpretation of life. They cannot enjoy a sunset because they are worried about tomorrow. They cannot fully listen during conversations because their thoughts are louder than the person speaking. They cannot rest because resting feels unproductive. Their mind turns every moment into a mental task instead of an experience. This is how mental exhaustion becomes an identity. Some people no longer remember what calmness feels like. Stress becomes their default emotional state. Their nervous system becomes addicted to stimulation. Even when nothing bad is happening, they still feel anxious because the body has adapted to constant emotional alertness. Modern life makes this even worse. People wake up and immediately consume noise. Notifications, news, messages, comparisons, arguments, endless scrolling. The brain never receives true silence anymore, and without silence, the mind cannot recover. Imagine trying to heal a wound while constantly reopening it every few minutes. This is what overstimulation does to the nervous system. The dangerous part is that many people become emotionally numb without realizing it. They continue functioning, but they stop feeling deeply. Their attention becomes fragmented, their patience weakens, their emotional tolerance collapses. Small inconveniences suddenly feel unbearable because the mind is already overloaded before the day even begins. And beneath all this noise, there is often something deeper hiding quietly. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough, fear of wasting life, fear of being forgotten. Many people spend years distracting themselves because they are terrified of sitting alone with these emotions. Silence becomes threatening because silence reveals what distraction was hiding. But eventually, life forces everyone to slow down at some point, maybe through burnout, maybe through heartbreak, maybe through loneliness, maybe through emotional collapse. And in those moments, people finally begin noticing how loud their minds have become. They realize they have spent years surviving mentally instead of actually living. That realization changes something fundamental. Because once a person becomes aware of their internal chaos, they can no longer pretend it does not exist. And this is where the real transformation begins, not when life changes externally, but when awareness begins internally. A calm mind is not created overnight. It is built through small moments of conscious detachment, through learning not to react instantly to every thought, through understanding that thoughts are temporary mental events, not commands. Most people treat every thought as if it were reality, but thoughts are often distorted reflections of fear, memory, insecurity, or conditioning. Imagine standing beside a highway watching cars pass by. You do not chase every car. You do not stop every vehicle. You simply observe. Thoughts work the same way, but most people jump into every passing thought and allow it to carry them emotionally for hours or even days. One negative idea becomes a chain reaction. One memory becomes emotional suffering. One fear becomes an imagined future disaster. The mind becomes quieter when you stop feeding every thought with emotional energy. Because attention is fuel. Whatever receives your constant attention becomes stronger inside your mind. Fear grows through attention. Anxiety grows through repetition. Insecurity grows through comparison. This is why mental silence often requires subtraction before addition. Less noise, less comparison, less stimulation, less emotional dependence on external validation. People constantly search for peace while remaining addicted to the very habits destroying it. Endless scrolling, endless consumption, endless mental escape. True peace requires confronting yourself, honestly. It requires sitting with uncomfortable emotions long enough to understand them instead of constantly escaping them. And this is difficult because the human mind prefers distraction over truth. Distraction feels easier in the short term, but over time, avoidance transforms into suffering. There is also a painful truth many people discover late in life. The mind will always create problems if your identity depends entirely on external conditions. If your peace depends on people behaving exactly the way you want, you will suffer. If your peace depends on perfect outcomes, you will suffer. If your self-worth depends on constant validation, you will suffer. Because life is unpredictable by nature. Mental freedom begins when you stop demanding certainty from an uncertain world. The calmest people are not those with perfect lives. They are the people who stopped trying to mentally control every possible outcome. They learned how to exist without needing constant reassurance from life. And maybe that is why silence feels so powerful, because silence removes illusion. When the noise disappears, truth becomes visible. You begin seeing which fears were imaginary, which relationships drained you, which habits poisoned your peace, which thoughts were never truly yours in the first place. For the first time, you stop hearing the world's expectations louder than your own inner voice. And slowly, very slowly, your mind begins to breathe again. At first, the silence feels unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable. A person who has lived in mental chaos for years often mistakes peace for emptiness. They sit in a quiet room and immediately feel the urge to reach for distraction. A phone, music, notifications, anything to avoid being alone with themselves. Because when the noise disappears, unresolved emotions begin rising to the surface, and many people spend their entire lives running from that moment. But something extraordinary happens when you stop running. The emotions you feared so deeply begin losing their power over you. Not because they disappear instantly, but because you finally allow yourself to face them without resistance. Most suffering intensifies through avoidance. The mind fears emotions more than the emotions themselves. It creates catastrophic stories around pain, loneliness, uncertainty, and rejection. Yet when you finally sit still long enough, you realize emotions move like waves. They rise, they peak, and eventually they pass. The problem is that modern life conditions people to fear stillness. Everything encourages constant stimulation, constant reaction, constant urgency. People no longer know how to simply exist without consuming something. Silence feels unnatural because distraction has become the normal state of society. Look around carefully. Most conversations are not truly conversations anymore. People wait for their turn to speak while their minds remain elsewhere. Most people no longer listen deeply because their attention has been fragmented into thousands of pieces. Even rest has become performative. People cannot relax without documenting it, cannot enjoy a moment without proving it happened. The mind never fully arrives anywhere because it is always divided between reality and mental noise. And this fragmentation slowly weakens the human spirit. People begin feeling disconnected from themselves without understanding why. They lose clarity. Their intuition becomes buried underneath endless information. They become emotionally reactive, mentally exhausted, and spiritually numb. There is a reason why some of the wisest people in history valued solitude and silence so deeply. Not because they hated the world, but because silence reveals the mind. In silence, you begin hearing thoughts you normally drown out. You begin noticing patterns, fears, attachments, emotional wounds, hidden motivations. Silence becomes a mirror that reflects your internal state with brutal honesty. At first, this honesty can feel painful. You may realize how much of your life has been driven by fear rather than purpose. How many decisions were based on approval rather than authenticity. How often you abandoned your own peace trying to satisfy others. And perhaps most painfully, how long you have been disconnected from yourself. But awareness is the beginning of freedom. A person cannot heal what they refuse to see. The moment you become conscious of your mental patterns, you stop being completely controlled by them. The mind loses some of its power when it is observed clearly. This is why emotional awareness is so important. Most people think strength means suppressing emotions, but suppressed emotions do not disappear. They transform internally. Anxiety, irritability, emotional numbness, chronic stress, exhaustion. The body eventually speaks what the mind refuses to acknowledge. A calm mind is not built through suppression. It is built through understanding, through learning how to sit with discomfort without immediately escaping it, through recognizing that pain itself is not always the enemy. Sometimes resistance to pain creates even greater suffering than the original emotion. Think about how often people mentally torture themselves over things they cannot change: the past, other people's opinions, uncertain futures, imaginary scenarios. The human mind wastes enormous energy fighting reality instead of accepting it, and this constant internal resistance becomes exhausting. Acceptance does not mean weakness. It does not mean giving up. It means seeing reality clearly without adding unnecessary mental suffering on top of it. A calm mind understands the difference between pain and psychological resistance. Pain may be unavoidable, but much of human suffering comes from refusing to accept what already exists. There is also another hidden source of mental chaos that many people ignore: comparison. Comparison quietly destroys inner peace because it trains the mind to measure self-worth through external images. And in the modern world, people compare themselves constantly without even realizing it. Someone is richer, more attractive, more successful, more confident, more accomplished, more admired. The mind becomes trapped in endless competition. Instead of experiencing life directly, people begin evaluating themselves through the imagined standards of others. And this creates a permanent feeling of inadequacy. No achievement feels enough because comparison constantly moves the finish line. But the truth is that comparison blinds people to their own lives. It steals presence, gratitude, identity. The more obsessed a person becomes with how others are living, the less connected they become to themselves. Mental silence begins returning when you stop trying to become everyone else, when you stop measuring your worth through external validation, when you stop asking the world for constant proof that you matter. Because the deepest form of peace comes from internal stability, not external perfection. External conditions will always change. People will disappoint you. Plans will fail. Circumstances will shift unexpectedly. Life will remain uncertain no matter how much you prepare. But a stable inner world allows you to move through uncertainty without collapsing psychologically. This is what emotionally mature people eventually understand. Peace is not the absence of problems. Peace is the ability to remain internally grounded while problems exist. It is the ability to experience emotion without drowning inside it, to experience uncertainty without panic, to experience silence without fear, and slowly, the mind begins changing. Not through force, but through awareness. You stop reacting instantly to every emotional impulse. You stop believing every fearful thought. You stop chasing distraction every second of the day. For the first time in years, there are moments where your mind becomes quiet enough for you to hear your real self underneath all the noise. Not the version shaped by fear, not the version addicted to approval, not the exhausted mind constantly preparing for disaster, but the deeper self that existed before the chaos consumed your attention. And in those rare moments of silence, something inside you finally begins to heal. Healing does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like sitting alone without feeling the need to escape yourself. Sometimes it looks like waking up without immediate anxiety crushing your chest. Sometimes it looks like allowing a thought to pass without following it into a spiral of fear. The most important transformations are often invisible to everyone except the person experiencing them. A person with a peaceful mind may still face difficulties, heartbreak, uncertainty, and pain. But there is a difference between experiencing pain and becoming consumed by it. When the mind becomes calmer, suffering no longer multiplies itself endlessly. Thoughts no longer dominate every moment. Fear no longer controls every decision. And perhaps this is what so many people are truly searching for. Not endless pleasure, not constant success, not perfection, but relief. Relief from the exhausting weight of their own minds, relief from the constant internal pressure, relief from feeling mentally trapped every single day. The strange thing is that many people spend years trying to fix their external lives while ignoring the chaos happening internally. They believe a new relationship, more money, more status, or more achievement will finally quiet the noise. But mental chaos follows people everywhere because the source was never entirely external. A restless mind can turn even beautiful moments into emotional suffering. This is why some people achieve everything they once dreamed about and still feel empty afterward. Because external success cannot create internal silence. The mind always carries itself into every new environment. If chaos exists internally, no destination will fully remove it. Real peace begins when you stop treating yourself like a machine designed only for productivity. Human beings were not meant to live in permanent mental stimulation. The nervous system was never designed for endless scrolling, endless comparison, endless urgency, endless pressure. Yet modern life normalizes emotional exhaustion so deeply that many people forget what calmness even feels like. But the body remembers, the soul remembers. Somewhere beneath all the noise, your mind still longs for stillness. That is why certain moments feel so powerful. Watching rain in silence, sitting near the ocean, walking alone at night, looking at the sky without speaking. In those moments, the mind briefly reconnects with something ancient and natural inside itself. And maybe that is the truth people forget most often. Peace is not something you create from nothing. It is something you return to after removing everything that was suffocating it. The endless need for validation, the addiction to distraction, the obsession with control, the fear of uncertainty, the constant comparison, the emotional attachment to every passing thought. Little by little, you begin letting these things go. And as you do, your inner world slowly becomes lighter. You start realizing that not every battle deserves your energy. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Not every fear deserves your belief. You begin protecting your peace more carefully because you finally understand how valuable mental silence truly is. There comes a moment when a person stops asking, "How do I control everything around me?" and starts asking, "How do I stop losing myself inside every situation?" That question changes everything. Because the goal of life is not to eliminate all uncertainty. The goal is to build a mind strong enough to remain steady within uncertainty. And when that happens, something remarkable begins to unfold. Life slows down emotionally. Small moments regain meaning. Conversations feel deeper. Breathing feels calmer. Sleep feels softer. The world itself may remain chaotic, but your relationship with that chaos changes completely. You no longer feel the need to mentally chase every thought. You no longer fight every uncomfortable emotion. You stop turning temporary feelings into permanent identities. Fear may still appear, but it no longer rules you. Anxiety may still visit, but it no longer defines you. Thoughts continue existing, but they stop owning your entire reality. And then one day, almost without noticing it, your mind finally becomes quiet. Not empty, not emotionless, not disconnected from life, but peaceful, aware, present, free from the endless war it once created against itself. In that silence, you begin hearing things you could never hear before. Your intuition, your clarity, your real desires, your authentic self beneath years of noise and conditioning. For the first time in a very long time, you are no longer surviving inside your own head. You are finally living. And maybe that is the greatest form of freedom a human being can experience. Not escaping the world, but escaping the prison of endless mental chaos. If this audiobook spoke to something deep inside you, subscribe to the channel for more powerful psychological and self-development content. Like the video to support the channel, share it with someone whose mind has been carrying too much noise for too long, and write in the comments, what is one thought you are finally ready to let go of?